Hi everybody, it's Unique History Channel, and tonight we're going to be doing a reading from the Orthodox Church, An Introduction to Eastern Christianity by Timothy Ware, and we'll be reading Chapter 13, Orthodox Worship, the Earthly Heaven. Doctrine and Worship. There is a story in the Russian primary chronicle of how Vladimir, Prince of Kiev, while still a pagan, desired to know which was the true religion, and therefore sent his followers to the various countries of the world in turn. They first went to the Muslim Bulgars of the Volga, but observing these when they gazed around them like men possessed, the Russians continued on their way dissatisfied. There is no joy among them, they were reported to Vladimir, but mournfulness and a great smell. There is nothing good about their system. Traveling next to Germany and Rome, they found worship more satisfactory, but complained that there too it was without beauty. Finally, they journeyed to Constantinople, and here at last, as they attended the divine liturgy in the great church of Holy Wisdom, they discovered what they desired. We knew not whether we were in heaven or earth, for surely there is no splendor or beauty anywhere upon earth. We cannot describe it to you. Only this we know, that God dwells there among humans, and that their services surpass the worship of other places. For we cannot forget that beauty. In this story can be seen several features of characteristic of Orthodox Christianity. There is the emphasis on divine beauty. We cannot forget that beauty. It has seemed to many that a particular gift of Orthodox people, especially of Byzantium and Russia, is the power of perceiving the beauty of the spiritual world and expressing the celestial beauty in their worship. In the second place, it is the characteristic that the Russians should have said, "We knew not whether we were in heaven or earth." Worship. For the Orthodox Church is nothing else than heaven on earth. The Holy Liturgy is sometimes something that embraces two worlds at once, sometimes. For both in heaven and on earth, one on the altar, one sacrifice, and one presence. In every place of worship, however humble its outward appearance, as the faithful gather to perform the Eucharist, they are taken up into heavenly places in every place of worship when this holy sacrifice is offered. Not merely the local congregation is present, but the Church universal, the saints, the angels, the Mother of God, and Christ himself, now the celestial power, are present with us and worship indivisibly. This we know, that God dwells there among humans. Orthodox, inspired by this vision of heaven on earth, have striven to make their worship in outward splendor and beauty an icon of the great liturgy in heaven. In the year 612, on the staff of the Church of the Holy Wisdom, there were 80 priests, 150 deacons, 40 deaconesses or lay ministers, 70 subdeacons, 160 readers, 25 cantors, and 100 doorkeepers. This gives some faint idea of the magnificence of the service which Vladimir's envoys attended. But many who have experienced Orthodox worship under very different outward surroundings have felt, no less than those Russians from Kiev, a sense of God's presence among humans. Turn, for example, from the Russian primary chronicle to a letter of an English woman written in 1935. This morning was so queer. A very grimy and sordid Presbyterian mission hall in the mews over a garage where the Russians are allowed once a fortnight to have the liturgy. A very stage property iconostasis and a few modern icons. A dirty floor to kneel on and form along the wall. And listen to two superb old priests and a deacon in a cloud of incense. And at the anaphora, an overwhelming supernatural impression. There is yet a third characteristic of orthodoxy, which the story of Vladimir's envoys illustrate. Whenever they wanted to discover the true faith, the Russians did not ask about moral rules or demand a reasoned statement of doctrine, but watched different nations at prayer. The Orthodox approach to religion is fundamentally a liturgical approach, which understands doctrine in context of divine worship. It is no coincidence that the word orthodoxy should signify alike belief and right worship, for the two things are inseparable. It has been truly said of the Byzantines, dogma with them is not an intellectual system apprehended by the clergy and expounded to the laity, but a field of vision where all things on earth are seen in relation to heaven and first and foremost the liturgical celebration. In the words of Georgios Foriovsky, Christianity is a liturgical religion. The Church is first of all a worshiping community. Worship comes first, doctrine and discipline second. Those who wish to know more about orthodoxy should not so much read the books that follow the example of Vladimir's routine and attend the liturgy. As Christ said to Andrew, "Come and see." Orthodoxy sees human beings, above all, as liturgical creatures who are most truly themselves when they glorify God, who find their perfection and self-fulfillment in worship. Into holy liturgy, which expresses their faith, the Orthodox peoples have poured their whole religious experience. It is the liturgy which has inspired their best art, poetry, and music. Among Orthodox, the liturgy has never become the preserve of the learned and the clergy, as it intended to be in the medieval West, but has remained popular, the common possession of the whole Christian people. The normal Orthodox lay worshipper, through familiarity from earliest childhood, is eternity at home in the church, through conversant with the audible parts of the Holy Liturgy, takes part with unconscious and unstudied ease in action, to the right to the extent only shared in the hyper-devout and ancestral mind in the West. In the dark days of their history, under the Mongols, the Turks, or the Communists, it is to the Holy Liturgy that the Orthodox people have always turned for inspiration and new hope, nor have they turned in vain. The outward setting of the services, the priests and the people. The basic pattern of services is the same in the Orthodox as is in the Roman Catholic Church. There is, first, Holy Liturgy, the Eucharist or Mass. Secondly, the Divine Office, the two chief offices of Mass and Vespers, together with the Midnight Office, first, second, and third, 6th, 9th hours, combined. Thirdly, the occasional offices for services intended for special occasions such as baptism, marriage, monastic profession, royal coronation, consecration of a church, burial of the dead. In addition to these, the Orthodox Church makes use of a great variety of lesser beans. While in many Anglican and most Roman Catholic parish churches, the Eucharist is celebrated daily, in the Orthodox Church today, a daily liturgy is not usual except in cathedrals and large monasteries. In an oral parish church is celebrated only on Sundays and feasts. But in contemporary Russia, where places of worship are few and many Christians obligated to work on Sundays, a daily liturgy has become the practice in many town parishes. In its service, the Orthodox language uses the church language of the people: Arabic in Antioch, Finnish in Helsinki, Japanese in Tokyo, and English when required in London or New York. One of the first tasks of the Orthodox missionaries from Cyril and Methodius in the 9th century to Innocent Veniamov and Nicholas Kasyankin in the 19th has always been to translate the service books into the native tongues. In practice, there have been partial exceptions to this general principle of using the vernacular. Greek-speaking churches employ not modern Greek, but the Greek in the New Testament and Byzantium times, while the Russian Church still uses the medieval translations in Church Slavonic. In 1906, many Russian bishops, in fact, recommended the Church Slavonic be replaced more or generally by modern Russian, but the Bolshevik Revolution occurred before the scheme could be carried into effect. In the Orthodox Church today, as in the early Church, all services are sung or chanted. There is no Orthodox equivalent to the Roman Low Mass or the Anglican said celebration. At every liturgy, as Matins and Vespers, incense is used and the service is sung, even though there may not be a choir or congregation, but the priest and single reader alone. In their church music, the Greek-speaking Orthodox continue to use the ancient Byzantine plain chant with its 8 tones. This plain chant, the Byzantine missionaries took with them into Slavonic lands, but over the centuries has become extensively modified, and various Slavonic churches have each developed their own style and tradition for the celestial music. Of these traditions, the Russian is the best known and the most immediately attractive to Western ears. Many consider Russian church music the finest in all of Christendom, and like in Russia itself and in the immigration, they're justly celebrated Russian choirs. Until very recent times, singing in Orthodox churches was usually done by the choir. Today, a small but increasing number of parish churches in Greece, Russia, and Romania and the West are beginning to revive congregational singing. if not throughout the service, then at any rate at special moments such as the Creed and the Lord's Prayer. In the Orthodox Church today, as in the early church, singing is unaccompanied, and instrumental music is not found, except among certain Orthodox in America, particularly the Greek Orthodox, who are now showing a penchant for the organ or the harmonium. Most Orthodox do not use hand or sanctuary bells inside the church, but they have outside belfries and take great delight in ringing the bells not only before but at various moments during the service itself. Russian bell ringing used to be particularly famous. Nothing, wrote Paul of Aleppo during his visit to Moscow in 1635, nothing affected me so much as the united clang of all the bells on the eves of Sundays and great festivals. At midnight before the festivals, the earth shook with their vibrations, and like the thunder drone, their voices went up into the skies. They rang the brazen bells after their customs. May God be startled at the noisy pleasantness of their sounds. An Orthodox church is usually more or less a square in plain, with a wide central space covered by a dome. In Russia, the church dome has assumed a striking onion shape, which forms so characteristic a feature of every Russian landscape. The elongated naves and cathedrals, common in cathedrals and larger parishes of the Gothic style, are not found in Eastern church architecture. In the past, it was not the custom to have chairs or pews in the central part of the church, although there might be benches or stalls along the wall, but sadly in recent years has been an increasing tendency, and alike in Greece and the West, to clutter the entire church with rows of seats. Yet even though it is still the normal practice of Orthodox to stand during the greater part of the service, non-Orthodox visitors are often astonished to see old women remaining on their feet for several hours without apparent signs of fatigue. But there are moments when the congregation can sit or kneel. Canon the 5th of the Ecumenical Council forbids all kneeling on Sundays and on any of the 50 days between Easter and Pentecost, but today the rule is unfortunately not as always strictly observed. It is a remarkable thing of how great the difference of present or the absence of pews to make to the whole spirit of Christian worship. There is an Orthodox worship of flexibility and self-conscious informality not found among Western congregations, at any rate north of the Alps. Western worshippers, arranged neatly in their neat rows, all in proper places, cannot move during the service without causing disturbance. A Western congregation is generally expected to arrive at the beginning and stay to the end. But in Orthodox worship, people can come and go more freely, and nobody is greatly surprised if they move about during the service. The same informality and freedom also characterizes the behavior of the clergy. Ceremonial movements are not so minutely prescribed as in the West. Priestly gestures are less stylized and more natural. This informality, while it can sometimes lead to irreverence, in the end is a precious quality which Orthodox would be most sorry to lose. They are at home in their church, not troops on a parade ground, but children in their Father's house. Orthodox worship is often termed otherworldly, but can truly be described as homely. It is a family affair, yet behind their homeliness and informality there lies a deep sense of mystery. In every Orthodox church, the sanctuary is divided from the rest of the interior by the iconostasius, a solid screen usually of wood covered with panel icons. In the early day, the chancel was separated merely by a low screen or 3-4 foot high. Sometimes the screen was surmounted by an open series of columns supporting a horizontal beam or architrave. A screen of this kind can be seen at St. Mark's, Venice. Only in comparative recent times, in many places, not until the 15th or 16th century, was the space between these columns filled up, the iconostasius given its full solid form. Many Orthodox liturgists would be glad to follow St. John of Kronstadt's example, and revert to a more open type of iconostasis in a few places which has actually been done. The iconostasis is pierced by 3 doors. The large door in the center, holy or royal door, when opened afterwards a view through the altar. This door is closed by the double gates, behind which hangs a curtain. Outside service time, except during the Easter week, the gates are kept closed and the curtain drawn. During services at particular moments, the gates are sometimes open, sometimes closed, while occasionally, when the gates are closed, the curtain is drawn across as well. Many Greek parishes, however, never close the gates or draw the curtain at any point in liturgy. In a number of churches, the gates have been removed altogether, while other churches have followed in the course of which is more liturgy far correct, keeping the gates but removing the curtain of the two other doors that on the left leads into the chapel of the process or preparation. And here the priest prepares the bread and the wine at the beginning of liturgy. That on the right leads into the diaconicon, generally used as a vestry, but originally the place where the sacred books, particularly the book of the Gospels, were kept together with relics. Lay people are not allowed to go behind the iconostasis, especially for special reasons, such as serving at the liturgy. The altar in the Orthodox Church, the holy table or throne as it stands free of the eastern wall. In the center of sanctuary, behind the altar, against the wall, is the bishop's throne. Orthodox churches are full of icons on the screen, on the walls, in special shrines, or on a kind of desk when they can be venerated by the faithful. When Orthodox people enter a church, their first action will be to buy a candle, go to an icon, cross themselves and kiss the icon, and they'll light the candle in front of it. They be great offers of candles, commented the English merchant Richard Chancellor, visiting Russia in the reign of Elizabeth I. In a decoration of the church, the various iconographical scenes and figures are not arranged fortuitously, but according to a definite theological scheme, so that the whole edifice forms one great icon or image of the kingdom of God. In Orthodox religious art, as in the religious art of the medieval West, there is an elaborate system of symbols, involving every part of the church building and its decorations. Icons and mosaics are not mere ornaments, but designed to make the church look nice, but to have a theological and liturgical function to fulfill. The icons fill the church, serve as a point of meeting between heaven and earth. That each local congregation prays Sunday by Sunday, surrounded by the figures of the Christ, the angels, and the saints. And these visible images remind the faithful unceasingly of the invisible presence of the whole heaven of the liturgy. The faithful can feel the walls of the church open upon eternity, and that they are helped to realize their liturgy on earth is one and the same, the liturgy of heaven. The multi-dominus icons express visions of the heaven on earth. The worship of the Orthodox Church is communal and popular. Any non-Orthodox who attends Orthodox services with some frequency will realize how closely the whole worshiping community, priests and people alike, are bound together into one. Among other things, the absence of pews helps to create a sense of unity. Although most Orthodox congregations do not join in the singing, it should not therefore be imagined they are taking no real part in the service, nor the iconostasis. Even its present solid form can make people feel cut off from the priest in the sanctuary. In few cases, many of the ceremonies take place in front of the screen, in full view of the congregation. There is in most Orthodox worship an unhurried and timeless quality, an effect produced in part by the constant repetition of litanies. Either in a longer or shorter form, the litany occurs several times every service of the Byzantine Rite. In the litanies, the deacon, if there is no deacon, the priest calls the people to pray for the various needs of the church and the world. In each petition, the choir of the people, Lord have mercy, Kyrie eleison in Greek, Gospodи помилуй in Russian, probably the first word of an Orthodox service, when a visitor grasps. In litanies, the response is changed to grant this, O Lord. The congregation associate themselves with different intercessions by making the sign of the cross and bowing. And the general sign of the cross is employed far more frequently by Orthodoxy than Western worshippers, and there is a greater freedom about the times when it was used. Different worshippers cross themselves at different moments, as each she wishes, although there are, of course, occasions in the service when all sign themselves at the same time. The other side of Orthodox worship is timeless and unhurried. Most Western people have the idea that Byzantium sermons, even if not literally timeless, are at the rate of extreme and intolerable length. Certainly, Orthodox functions tend to be more prolonged than their Western counterparts, but we must not exaggerate. It is perfectly possible to create the Byzantine liturgy and to preach a short sermon in an hour and a quarter. In 1943, the Patriarch of Constantinople laid down that in parishes under his jurisdiction, the Sunday liturgy should not last over an hour and a half. Russians, on the whole, take longer than Greeks for services, but a normal Russian parish of the Emigration, the vigil service on Saturday night lasts no more than 2 hours, and often less. Monastic offices, of course, are more extended, and they mount Athos at great festivals. The service sometimes go over 12 or even 15 hours without a break, but this altogether is exceptional. Non-Orthodox may take heart from the fact that Orthodox are often alarmed as they are by the length of services. And we are now entered into our travail and anguish, writes Paul of Aleppo in his diary as he enters Russia. For their churches are empty of seats. There is not even one, even for the bishop. You see the people all out the service standing like rocks, motionless or incessantly bending with their devotions. God help us for the length of their prayers and chants and masses. We have suffered great pain, and so that our very souls are tortured with fatigue and anguish. In the middle of the Holy Week, he explains, God grant us his special aid to get through the whole of his present week. As for the Muscovites, their feet must be surely of iron.